Hi, I'm Max Brantley with the Arkansas Times. It's Friday, May 29th, and here's some news headlines from Arkansas. Governor Asa Hutchinson this morning had the press in for bill signing ceremonies to celebrate his successful legislative session. The big news, of course, was signing a bill for an $87 million bond issue to give that money to Lockheed Martin to aid its bid to win a contract to build military vehicles at its plant at Camden. The governor emphasized that there's no guarantee that Lockheed Martin will win this bid, but he says that the money from Arkansas will make the company price competitive. Got that? I hope you understand. We're giving money to a higher cost operator so they can bring their costs down and match two other competitors who apparently can operate more cheaply. Poor little Arkansas subsidizing the federal government. Doesn't that make you feel proud? The governor also signed a bill that will move the 2016 primary elections from May to March. This is so that Arkansas can participate with other southern states in a hoped-for Republican sweep for whoever the leading Republican presidential candidate will be that he'll arise from the South as the party's nominee. Governor Hutchinson favors Mike Huckabee. The question of who the Republican nominee is going to be is very interesting. There's no telling how many candidates there'll be, 10, 15, who knows how many. Recent polling by Quinnipiac gave you some idea of how fractured the race is. They found 5 people tied for first in their most recent polling, but first doesn't mean very much. Those 5 people had 10% each. They included Mike Huckabee, but there's more yet to come. much more to learn about the Republican presidential race, and unfortunately we'll have to listen to a lot of it before it's done. Other news from around the country. The Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals today struck down Idaho's ban on abortions at 20 weeks of pregnancy. The interest there is that Arkansas has a virtually identical law that was passed in 2013. No lawsuit has been filed yet in Arkansas over it. Another piece of abortion news was a new Gallup poll that shows the country, a solid majority of the country, now describes itself as pro-choice rather than pro-life. That's something of a shift from recent years. The more interesting numbers is how strongly the percentage favors keeping abortion at least of some sort legal, as opposed to a relatively small percentage that wants the procedure totally outlawed. This, of course, is much different from the legislating you see in the Arkansas legislature. News on another moral topic of a sort. Circuit Judge Wendell Griffin today refused to dismiss a lawsuit against state officials over their refusal to treat same-sex couples the same as married couples, particularly in filing income tax, health insurance coverage, and Social Security benefits. He did not issue a ruling in the suit, but the suit was kept alive, and he ordered the state to respond. The fact is, whatever he does in this case won't really matter until the U.S. Supreme Court and the Arkansas Supreme Court rules. Elsewhere, lawyers for Bobby Moore's estate. He was a teenager killed by Little Rock police officer Josh Hastings in 2012 during a reported car burglary. Say they're going to file a civil rights suit Monday against Josh Hastings and other Little Rock officials over the death. They say it was unconstitutional. You may remember that Josh Hastings was tried twice for killing the young man. Both trials ended in a mistrial. The charge was finally dropped, but he was fired and didn't challenge his firing ultimately from the police department. A civil suit is different from a criminal suit, of course. We learned last night after we had recorded yesterday's program that from an FOI request why the state budget administrator Brandon Sharp was fired. Papers from the Department of Finance Administration show that complaints were made of sexual harassment against him by other department employees. And this followed by about a year, a warning that he had had previous disciplinary problems that said that if there was a recurrence, he would be fired, and it appears that that's what happened. News from our neighbor in the south of us, Louisiana. The Louisiana legislature is on the verge of passing a medical marijuana bill, and the governor says he will sign it. Now, it's somewhat limited. It's going to be heavily regulated, and it's going to go to people with certified medical conditions, but it's certainly a step toward medical marijuana that Arkansas hasn't yet taken. It's perhaps a question to ask Asa Hutchinson if you ever get a chance. The other big news in Arkansas is high water everywhere at near record levels. The Arkansas River is expected to crest at Little Rock today. The Two Rivers Park, part of the River Trail, and the Rebsamen Golf Course all have been closed because of high water. We have a picture on the blog today of water lapping over the North Little Rock end of the Big Dam Bridge. And finally, one other piece of news on a sad note, but maybe there's some hope in it. Next week, they're going to announce a big campaign to mark the 20th anniversary of the disappearance of Morgan Nick, a 6-year-old child who was abducted from a baseball game in Alma 20 years ago this June. They're going to have billboards with pictures of what she might look like today if she were to be found, and other observances that they hope will perhaps stir some renewed interest in the case that might produce a solution to this mystery and find out who took her so many years ago. That's the news for this week. I'm Max Brantley. I'll be back Monday.